Hey guys, and good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is where you're at. Hello, and thank you guys for listening. I am Jake Graham, and this is the OTown podcast. This is actually going to be the second episode of the OTown podcast. Put one out about 2 weeks ago. I posted it on the Citizens of Steele County. Went ahead on that site. I feel like it gets a little more popularity, a little wider basis of the town. I don't really want to spam them all over, because I don't want to be taking advantage of people's Facebook pages and their group. I don't think that's fair to self-promote myself. But where this is a podcast involved in Owatonna and Steele County, I figured, you know what, maybe if I post one or two a month to the social media page, I can be forgiven. And I have had great feedback about what the show is going to be. Got a few people messaged out to me. Thank you guys so much for reaching out to me. Had one person in Connecticut actually reach out to me. That was pretty cool, that in Connecticut, they were hearing about the OTown podcast, the first ever episode. I don't even consider that one a real episode, but she reached out to me, said she's looking forward to getting some more episodes. So here we are. We're going to dive in. Guys, this week, what we are talking about, of course, with this time of year, it's fair season. So I want to really get into the Steele County Free Fair. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys here. I'm not going to lie. I barely am scratching the surface here, and that's okay, because it's not my goal to teach you guys the Owatonna history or the history of Steele County. It is my goal for us to learn it together, to be interested in it together. I want to learn more. I'm hoping this short, relatively smooth podcast goes first of all, I hope it goes smooth, but I'm hoping this develops into more questions. You know, I think the only way this podcast is going to grow is with interaction. It's not just my podcast. I'm just the voice. I'm just the guy behind the microphone. But the only way this podcast will grow is with your help. And by help, I actually mean your social interactions, your comments, your stories. If I say something that's complete garbage and you know it's not true, like chime in and say, hey, Jake, you mean well, but that's a load of BS. I promise you guys, I will not be offended. I'm one of the easier people to work with. Guys, what we're going to talk about this week is the Steele County Free Fair. With it coming up, I felt that it was only appropriate to go ahead and talk about that for just a little bit here. Again, I don't know a lot about the Free Fair. I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. We're going back in time a little bit. Talk about the first Free Fair. That happened in 1860. That is right. The fair first started in Owatonna on a 40-acre plot down on Main Street in 1860. But to be fair, it did not gain popularity into the 70s, the 1870s. Now, some of the contests they had, and this is the money, the prize money, some of the events they held back then. Best yoke of a working oxen was $6. Best wagon made in Steele County won $3. Best buggy made in Steele County won $5. Best team plow won $2. Best butter churn won $1. Best corn won 50 cents. Best flour won 50 cents. It's crazy to think how people could get so excited about $6 back in 1960, but $6 is the equivalent of $227 today, and 50 cents is just under $19. So this was probably good money to win back then, especially if this was your trade. This is something that you guys did on the regular. It was pretty cool that people could come to town, or I should say, from all around the county, come into town and really show off their craft, really appreciate the love that they had for their craft. And not only the love, but how good they were. They felt so confident about their craft skills that they would actually compete for money. A couple of bucks here and there, it sure went a long way, especially back in them days. So from the sounds of things, it sounds like the fair was actually a pretty big success, and it would have continued. But unfortunately, the Civil War had other plans. That is right. Shortly after the fair of 1860, the Civil War broke out. And, well, everyone had to get into a wartime production mode, and there really wasn't much time to celebrate one's craft, especially when a lot of younger folks were off to war. Parents certainly were more stressed out about, you know, their children being off in war than gathering to the fair. But shortly after the Civil War ended back in 1870, the fair returned to Owatonna on Main Street on a 40-acre plot of land. And actually, fun fact, the Steele County Free Fair actually moved around quite a bit back then. That is right. It wasn't in one location. They would move it throughout the county, throughout the community, and it did not find its home until 1917. That is right. The fair actually moved around for a good long time before it settled down into what we know now as the Steele County Free Fairgrounds. Now, I'm going to be real honest. This is where I ask my listeners to help me out. What is the name of the fairgrounds? Does it have a legit name that it goes by? I should have looked that up. I'm doing the podcast now, wishing I would have came up with that fact, but I didn't. It's something that I messed up. And now I'm asking for you guys to help me out, bail me out. I'm going to try to get a few of those in there. Not because I'm too lazy to do the work, but as I said before, I'd really like this to be an interactive podcast where you guys help me out and fill in the blanks. And together, we build the history of Owatonna and Steele County. Now, another fact about the Free County Fair is that it was not always free. The fair did not actually become free to enter until 1927. So just shy of 100 years of the fair being free. And the concept behind the free fair was if they made the fair free for everyone to enter, then more people would come and more people would be more likely to spend their money. I'd say where it's 2024 and the free fair is still continuing on today, that concept was probably the most important thing they ever did to the Steele County Fair, was making it free. And as we all know, even though the name says free fair, if you plan on going to the free fair, make sure you bring some cash. Now, the Steele County is often, or I should say, the Steele County Free Fair is often considered one of the best fairs in Minnesota. Up there was the Minnesota State Fair, which conveniently enough, in 1883 and 1884, the state fair was held at the Steele County Fairground. Now, I'm not sure if they had two different fairs. I wasn't reading it that way. I was definitely reading it as the Steele County Fair was the state fair that year. So if you guys have any clarification on that, greatly appreciate that. But that's how I took it, that the Steele County Fair has actually been designated the State Fair of Minnesota 2 times. It's been a long time, and I don't think we're going to see that now that we actually have an official Minnesota State Fair. But hey, we were once the State Fair twice. Anyways, guys, that brings me on to my next topic. I want to talk about renovations because I read off the list of things, the contests that they used to have in the very beginning. It's pretty much just like a show and craft, a couple of horse pulling events, auction events, tasting. But in 1930, they brought the lavish stage to show with a beautiful chorus line that played in the grandstand. So the grandstands that we all sit down and some of us complain that it makes our butts feel really tired and sore. Well, those grandstands came up in 1930. And then by 1932, a big car racing came to the fair. And as we sadly all know, big car racing is no longer there. But as we just heard, Waseca, they just had their races come back. I believe it was after 39 years. So they're racing at the Waseca County Fairgrounds. It's pretty cool. You know, I talked to the guys here. Do you think it would happen? They said, absolutely not. So don't hold your breaths on expecting to see any motor racing back at the Steele County Free Fair, even though it is a nice thought. I do believe they still have the Demolition Derby, though. I'm pretty sure that still happens, and they have a lot of great shows. One thing that I want to get that I wasn't really able to find was a list of performers that you have seen at the Steele County Free Fair. For me, I've seen Not a whole lot, actually. I think it was Joe Nichols. I seen him one year. That was pretty cool. I did watch my first ever rodeo. That was pretty cool. I checked that off my bucket list that day to ride a bull. Not because I rode one, but because I will never want to ride one. It didn't matter seeing those guys throwing off those bulls. Certainly was not something that I want to do. But yeah, really, guys, the free fair has evolved into what it is today. And as I said, there is so much more to talk about. This is just a tip of the iceberg. It's a very popular event. Personally, I've gone to it every year since I've been out here. I absolutely love it. They don't know that I'm doing a podcast. They're not affiliated with the podcast. I'm just talking about my true feelings about the fair. It's definitely a staple in this community. Brings a lot of people together. One thing that I know about this fair is you can go all year without seeing somebody, and you're bound to see them at the fair. I think that's what the original intention was with the fair, was to get the community together, for farmers and makers to sell their goods, and just relax and have a good time, come together and be a community. And that legacy still lives on today. Very easy to see. Lots of food there. But I have a gripe. That's right. This podcast would not be complete if I did not have a gripe. So I'm from the Northeast. As you guys know, we have fairs there too. The food is very, very different. For one, we don't really have cheese curds. And for two, I could not find it for the last 3 years. Why is there no Italian sausage at your fair? Honestly, guys, what is going on with that? Now I know somebody's going to tell me, as soon as I load this up, the first comment's going to be like, there is Italian sausage. It's over in the back corner somewhere. And I'm going to be kicking myself because I want my damn Italian sausage. That is a staple in the Northeast fairs. So to see it not out here, it really makes me homesick, guys. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. All right. I think that's going to be it for today. I got about 12 minutes into this podcast. Just want to let you guys know, thank you so much. Please, I know the editing in this is a little bit rough. I'm experimenting. I'm hoping to get better as I go on. I'm hoping to get more comfortable. I may sound a little bit nervous. And to be honest, I really was. In the beginning of this, I'm trying to read my notes and talk. And I realized one thing. I cannot read and talk. I cannot chew bubblegum and walk. I am very one-dimensional. I got to try to remember everything that I'm reading because I certainly cannot read it on the air live or recording. It's not live. You guys know what I mean. All right, guys. Remember, please, it helps me out a lot. It lets me know if you're listening, if you like or comment on the podcast. If there's things you don't like, well, I'm a tough guy. Go ahead. Tell me all about it. Guys, my name is Jake Graham, and you have listened to the OTown podcast.